Now that you have learned how to deal with negative exponents, let's combine negative exponents with the order of operations to simplify more expressions. Now notice this is a starred expression, or it will be just as soon as I put the star down. So this is one that you need to know if you do not already. Even if you already have it on a study sheet, this one is so important, I suggest you put it down again. The order of operations. 1. Work inside symbols of inclusion. 2. Do exponents and roots. 3. Multiply and divide from left to right. 4. Add and subtract from left to right. Now let's use the order of operations to evaluate a couple expressions. Let's evaluate 2 subtract 2/3 to the negative 2 power. The first thing I need to do is to do the roots, because you do what's in symbols of inclusion first. Well, inside symbols of inclusion I have the fraction 2/3. 2/3 cannot be reduced, so I cannot do anything else inside symbols of inclusion. So now I go to my exponents. A negative exponent tells me to take the reciprocal. So I can rewrite the problem as 2 subtract 3/2 squared. A negative exponent tells me to take the reciprocal of the base. The reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. I copy everything else exactly the same. I leave the 2, I leave the subtract, I take the reciprocal of the base, and of course once I take the reciprocal, I leave off the negative exponent, because the negative exponent tells me to take the reciprocal. Once I take the reciprocal, I don't want to do it again. Just like if someone gives you a list of chores to do, once you do the chore, you mark it off and you do not leave it down. But I still have the exponent. I do exponentiation before I do subtraction. So I have to go ahead and do 3/2 squared. Well, 3/2 squared is the same as 9/4, because 3/2 squared is the same as 3/2 times 3/2. Well, 3/2 times 3/2 is 9/4. 3 times 3 is 9. I'm going to put an error there so you won't think it is subtraction. 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 2 is 4. Now I need to add this fraction. Well, to add fractions, I need to find the common denominator. That's understood to be 2/1 subtract 9/4. The common denominator between 1 and 4 is 4. 1 goes into 4 4 times. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 goes into 4 1 time. 1 times 9 is 9. It's the way most of you probably find your common denominator. Now we have 8/4 subtract 9/4. Once you get a common denominator, then you keep the denominator 4 and subtract or add the numerators. 8 subtract 9 would be a -1. So the answer is -1/4. Let's look at another one. Let's evaluate a -1/4. Subtract 3 times 3 minus 5 to the -3 power. According to the rule for the order of operations, I work inside symbols of inclusion first. So first I do the 3 minus 5. I copy everything else down exactly the same. And all I've done here is recopy the problem. So, -1/4 subtract 3 times 3 minus 5 to -3 is equal to a -1/4 minus 3. Now I'm doing what's inside symbols of inclusion. 3 subtract 5 is -2. You always work inside symbols of inclusion first. and then I bring down the negative 3. I copy everything else exactly the same. I'm left with subtraction, multiplication, and exponents. Which do I do first? Subtraction, multiplication, or exponents? Well, according to the rule for the order of operations, I do the exponents next. So I'm going to do negative 2 to the negative 3. Well, negative 2 to the negative 3 is the same as 1 over negative 2 cubed, which is the same as 1 over negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, which is the same as 1 over negative 8 or negative 1 over 8, because a positive divided by negative is negative. So I'm going to bring down the negative 1/8 and put it in. Bring down the negative 1/4, stays the same. Bring down the subtraction, the 3, but I do my exponentiation. Negative 2 to the negative 3 is a negative 1/8. I'm now left with subtraction and multiplication. That's negative 1/4, subtract 3 times negative 1/8. Now really, remember, this is the same as plus a negative 3. So I'm going to do my multiplication now, and I would have a negative 1/4 plus a positive 3/8. A negative 3 times a negative 1/8, the negative times negative would be a positive. So I have a negative 1/4 plus 3/8. Now I need to find the common denominator. The common denominator between 4 and 8 is 8. 4 goes into 8 2 times. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. 8 goes into 8 1 time. 1 times 3 is 3. And now I have a common denominator, so I keep the denominator 8, add the numerators. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1. So my answer is 1/8. Now I'm going to give you some more exercises. Be sure that you copy down the exercises as I read them. Evaluate. 1/2 plus 3 times 3/2 to the negative 2. 4 times 2 to the 0 power. Subtract the quantity 3 times 5 to the 0 power. 4 subtract 1 quantity to the negative 3 times 2 to the 4th. Once you've copied down the problems, stop the tape, work the problems, and then restart the tape to check your answers. Now I'm going to give you the answers. Compare your answers with my answers. If you disagree, be sure to check with someone.